All right, what's up everyone? This is Don with Third Creative, and this is the walkthrough tutorial video for Big Sky. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through all of the layers, the processes, and hopefully cover anything and everything that you might need to know in order to create the best images possible with this design. I'll be working with a 2x3 vertical file. Just keep in mind that the layer structure and the concepts are pretty consistent no matter what file you're working with. At the end, I will take a minute to touch on the built-in schedule option that I have included with this design. But let's jump into it. I always encourage you to get familiar with the layer structure, where things are, just by kind of going through and clicking on some of these eyeballs to see the folders. Of course, they're labeled, but I feel like it kind of helps you get an idea where everything is at. Let's start with the very bottom folder, background layers. We'll open that up. We'll go all the way to the bottom. Very first layer that we have here is the lower color, which you can see here is white. Double clicking this box will bring up your color picker and allow you to change it to any color that you like. Pretty simple. These next two layers here are for these stroke outlines, these stripes that you have. So if you want to change the color, you'll just double click the word stroke. It'll bring up your layer style panel. You can barely see it, but right next to the word color, you got a little box where you can again pick any color that you like. You can also adjust the size here if you want them thicker or thinner. And same thing would apply to the upper stripe. So we've got the top one and the bottom one, you can see. Next we have a lower paper texture, so it's kind of subtle. If I were to zoom in a little bit, you would be able to see it a little better, but there is a paper texture here. Let's get it back to fitting on the screen. Here we go. We've got a subfolder here, which is Field and Sky Options. So let's open that up. We've got a little bit to unpack here. Go all the way to the very bottom of this subfolder. There is another subfolder which says Circle Shape. I'm going to open it up because there is another shape in there, and we'll talk about that. So basically this is a shape layer where everything else is clipped to, and that's what all of this background is made up of. So if I turn it off, you can see everything goes away. So if you, rather than unclipping everything in order to get a full screen effect or a full canvas effect, I put this full canvas layer in here. So if you just turn it on, all of these field and sky layers will just fill up the entire canvas. You will lose that lower curved section that you can see here. So if you want to do it that way, you just turn that on. Close that up. Next we have, it's labeled softball. So this is an image of a softball field. If you want baseball, right up here it's turned off. It's labeled baseball. You can just turn that on. You'll have a field that is baseball. I will say that I have, this is a much larger image, and I have it kind of zoomed in. You can, I'm going to hold down Shift, Command, or let's see, Shift Option to maintain everything. You can shrink it down. You can move it down. You've got a lot of real estate to work with. So I kind of like the look of this, even though you lose the stadium lights. It's daytime anyways, and you get a good look of the fencing and the bleachers. But you've got room to work with. If you're using baseball, you will want to select both. So controller command, click on this layer with the other one selected. It'll get both of them, and then that way you can scale up and down with both layers. Keep everything where it belongs. There is a little bit of Gaussian blur on both of them, just to create a little bit of depth of field. You can turn that off if you don't want that, or if you don't like that. Next we have brighter sky option, which is turned on. If you turn it off, you can see everything's kind of muted doesn't look too good. I created a couple built-in options, so you'll see by default it's set to this. If you want a little bit darker or moodier sky, you can turn this one off and turn the one just above it on. And those are two built-in effects. I will say that you can actually jump in here and play with this if you want to. So what I would probably do is, if you want to adjust it, is work specifically with blues and cyan. So if you come up here in your properties, you can see cyans. I have the cyans boosted a lot, and I have the darkness. So you can make them darker, you can make them brighter. Obviously, if you make them brighter, you probably want to bring the saturation back down. You can even change a little bit. You don't want to get too carried away, but you can really play around with the cyans. And also, let me go up to the blue, or down to the blues, and it's kind of the same thing. You can boost them, you can desaturate them, you can really play around with it, get different looks. So that's really if you want to really get into the details. Otherwise, you can just stick with the two options that are built in and roll with it. We already talked about this layer. This is the baseball field. Turn it on, turn it off, depending on what sport you're working with. Next, we have a color overlay. It's set to soft light, and the opacity is only 5%, but this just adds a little warmth, a warm tone. You can turn it off. You can increase the opacity, and it really boosts that warmth. So you don't want to get too carried away with it, but if you don't want that, just turn it off. Also have a levels adjustment that I thought helped make the background pop a little bit more. So that's what that is. You can adjust it if you want to, or turn it off if you want to. And next we have just a couple of layers that make some artificial atmosphere, hopefully adding just a little bit more realism. So you can probably just leave those alone. And that is everything within the Field and Sky subfolder. The only other layer in the background layers folder is this exposure vignette. So if I turn it off, if you look at the corners, it's a little bit dark. If I turn it off, it kind of evens out. So you may not want that effect. You may like it like this. So up to you. You can actually click on the actual exposure adjustment in the properties. You can decrease the effect, increase the effect. You can even, if you really want to get into it, you can bring this in tighter, which you don't want to get too carried away. Obviously, it doesn't look good, but you've got some options there if you want to adjust the vignette for any reason. Let's keep it moving. And the next folder that we have here is the upper text options. So you see that is the upper text. We'll open this up, excuse me. I've got two subfolders. So I've got it set up for what I call option 1, and then I have another folder here for option 2. So option 2 is basically if you want to have your team name and sport at the top. And if you were to do that, then you would use this bottom area here for the player name where it says Bulldog. That would be their first name more than likely, depending on how you decide to do it. And then this white grass text could be their last name. Varsity could say freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, or anything else that you would want it to. So a few options, but let's dive into them. Let's look at option 1. Basically, I have the name here, and I do have it with 2 colors. Those of you who use automation software, sports photo automation, more than likely, you know that the 2 colors is very difficult to achieve. So you may have to go with one. The important thing is that you have some contrast here. So you've got your sky. You want to make sure that the name pops. In this case, the orange is bright enough. Obviously, the white is bright enough. If you want to retain the 2-color look, you would double click on the T here to highlight everything. Then you would click and drag to highlight just the first name, and you can change the first name. Then you can click and drag over the last name, change the last name. Now, when you have it selected, you can also change the color here or up here. So if you've got a team that's neon green, you can do that. So basically, you just highlight the first name to change what it says and also to change the color. Same thing for the last name. So we'll get out of that. I have a drop shadow here. If you need it to stand out a little bit more, you can turn that on. So if you're not getting enough contrast, or it just depends on the color scheme that you're working with. And then of course here we've got our freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Now I have this set to white and I have it set to soft light, so you can kind of see that the sky shows through. So you can take it off of soft light if you want it to stand out more. But I kind of like the way that that looked. But if you use other colors, it's not going to look good. You go with red, you get purple, you get the idea. So you can change it to normal blend mode from soft light if you want to or need to. Let's look at the, well, I can see that I misspelled upper, so we'll correct that. But let's look at this upper text option 2. So here we've got a few things going on. Here, very first thing, we have lady. So if it's not lady, just turn it off, or you can change it to say anything else that you want to. You could make it have the year. Just depends on how you want to set everything up. Here we have our sport, and so it's softball. I've got it neon yellow because that works with softball, but you can change the color. If you double click on it, you can come up here or up here in your properties. Very simple. I will say, what's something, what's a long sport name? I'm drawing a blank. Let's see, football, baseball, basketball. Oops, I'm typing and I'm not typing. All right, so that still fits, but it's really tight. So if you run into anything like that, it is clipped to this folder that contains this shape. And so if you select this shape, select the move tool, you can click on a side anchor point and drag it out a little bit. Same thing with the other side. If you want it taller, you can do that. So you can adjust the size to fit whatever the sport is that you're working with. Let's see, if you want to change the color of this, this little banner here, or this shape, very simple. It's got a color overlay. You can change it to anything that you want. Next we have our team name. And so team name, let's see, this is option 1. So there's 2 options. I have this in this seafoam green, and I have the other option in the regular green here, you can see. So basically they're very similar. They're both nice baseball, softball script fonts. This font I really like, and this is something I've been doing a lot, but I've been including a few options, including some options that require a commercial license. So this one, what is it called? HunderGod. It does require a commercial license. It's $17 at Creative Market, at least at the time that I'm recording this, and you can go with that. But if you like a free option, this font here, Frodmile, is free for commercial use, and it's a great font as well. So it just depends which option you want to go with. Changing the color, very simple. Double click on the text layer. You can change the color here or here. But of course we have this stroke outline you can see, so you would double click the word stroke and you can change the color of your stroke, or you can change the size if you want to. And same thing applies to both options. And that is pretty much it for that subfolder and for the upper text options folder altogether. It does have a paper texture clipped to this folder, so it's very subtle, but you can see this paper texture will apply. You can turn that off if you want to. It just matches the paper texture that is down below and also the paper texture that you see on this card. So up to you if you want to leave that on or turn it off. Next we have our subject images. This is pretty self-explanatory, but if you open it up, I have a sample subject in here. So you would drop your subjects in here, scale and position them to your liking. There is a layer mask. So if you were to do anything where you didn't have this lower text and shapes, and then you were to also, let's see, where is it, do something like this, you would want to turn this layer mask off. So hold down Shift and click on it, or you can right click to disable or enable. But then this will allow you, now you can see how my perspective is not very accurate, but if you wanted to do something full body, you could do that. Just scale and position them, add a little bit of drop or ground shadow, and you're good to go. So otherwise you can leave this on as long as you're keeping this lower area here. This layer mask coordinates with this circle right here, so keeps everything nice and clean. Of course, we also have these layers that kind of cover all of that up, but you may have, you know, legs or something prop extended. It'll just keep everything nice and clean. So that's pretty much it for that. There is a color grade similar to the background, a little bit of warmth, so you can turn that off. It's very subtle. I'm turning it off, on, adds a little bit of warmth to it. It's only at 8%, so you can increase it, but you can get carried away, so be careful there. And the same thing with saturation. Now, without this, my subject saturation was kind of, it just needed a boost. And so when I created these images, I added a saturation layer that I clipped to the subject folder. And what is it? If I turn it, it's plus 15. It's pretty high. So it really depends on the images that you're putting in there. They may not need a saturation boost, or this may be way too much. So if you want the saturation boost but it's too much, you can reduce this here. But just keep in mind that it's supposed to be a general saturation boost, so it's going to apply to every subject that you put in there. So you want to find something that's safe, or you can turn it off. All right, now we have our lower text and graphic layers. So a little bit going on in here, a lot going on in here, but we'll sort it out. So if I go to the very bottom of this folder, we just have some ground shadows that I've added. You can see if I turn them on and off. Nothing really that you need to do with that. Next we have a subfolder for rectangle shape. So that is the shape that this wood grain is clipped to. You can see this wood grain layer is clipped to this folder, which contains this shape layer. So you can make this bigger. You can adjust it if you want to. More than likely, you're not going to need to do that. I've got a bevel to try to give it a little bit of a three-dimensional look. Here we have our wood grain, which has a hue saturation. I adjusted it, so it was very light, which that doesn't look bad, but I wanted a little more saturation. So if you want to adjust that even further, you can. You can desaturate it, you can darken it. Well, maybe you wouldn't want to do that. Maybe you want to leave it saturated, darken it. You can adjust the tonality, but you don't have much wiggle room. I said tonality. You can adjust the color, but it's real easy to get carried away and for it to look bad. So really it's probably just a matter of how much saturation you want and how light or dark you want it. But in all honesty, you're probably not going to touch it at all. I think I've got it set to a good point. Here we have our subtext. Let's zoom in to look at that, so you can kind of see what I've done here. I tried to go for something that looks like it's kind of engraved or etched, and so you'll see this this inner shadow that we have here, and I have the color set to black, but I have the blend mode set to soft light. So if you don't want this beveled, etched, chiseled look, you can set it to normal and pick any color that you want. That is up to you, but you could also switch to overlay if you want it to be a little bit bolder, a little richer. Saturation gets a little bit much, or you can leave it at soft light, but you can really just change this to anything that you want. I currently, if you were to go up to your character panel, I have the kerning, or the distance between these letters, set to 1,000, so you can decrease or increase that to your liking. That's pretty much it. Here we have another subfolder that says grass shape layer. So you see, it's pretty obvious. I can center this up maybe. We've got this shape layer with a grass texture clip to it. So here's our shape. Again, if you want to adjust this shape, you can. Clicking and dragging on these anchor points. You don't want to get too carried away, because if I turn off this grass, you can kind of see where I used white instead of black, but I hand painted these little strokes in so it would give the appearance of grass blades coming out. Now, when you're viewing it like this, you don't really see it too much, but banners or any large prints, you will see it. So you have the shape layer. If you distort it too much, it'll start to look weird. Or actually this one. Here we have our grass. Again, I have a hue saturation, so if I turn that off, you can see I went with something a little bit warmer and brighter. You can double click hue saturation and play around with these if you want a slightly different look. That is up to you. And let's see, next we have our sport name. So this says sport name, but if you were going to do the player name down here, this would be your player's last name. I will say I have the blend if. So if I double click on this, you can see I've got some things going on here that allow the grass blades or the darks to kind of show through, to give it that appearance that it's like painted on the grass. And white looks good, but when I was playing around with it, there's not much else that really looks good on this green. So I'll leave that up to you. More than likely, you're just going to want to leave this white. But yeah, pretty simple to change the sport name. And of course, you can, if you have something longer, you can adjust all of the shapes, or you can just shrink your text down a little bit, whichever you want to do. Let's see. Close that up. Close that up. All right, so next we have some layers that are for, well, it says rectangle card shape. So if I turn it off, turn it on, you can see. Let's open that back up. So we have another shape, and again, you can adjust the size of it by grabbing these anchor points on the sides or the top or the bottom. You can adjust it, make it however you want. You can also rotate it. You can do a lot there. To change the color, you would double click color overlay here, select this box, change the color to the color that you want. Pretty simple. It's in a subfolder here that has a drop shadow, so you can see what that's doing. And then we have some text layers that are clipped. So again, we have lady, If you don't need that, just turn it off, or if you want to change it to say something else, you can. But here we have the 2 script font options, and I have Bulldog set to both. I've got it where it kind of runs off. If you don't like that look, you can shrink it down, rotate it, make everything fit on there. You could even adjust the size of the shape to fit it better. That's up to you, but basically pick which font you want, and then you would type in your team name and you make your adjustments from there. And then we have our paper texture that is clipped to it, which you can kind of see the texture there. That's pretty much it for that subfolder. Next we have our softball option, which is turned on. And if I turn that off, you can see just above it, it has a baseball option. You can turn that on. You can open these up, and I mean, they're set into left and right. You can scale them up or down or move them if you want to. I have a curves adjustment on both of these to reduce the contrast. So if I turn that off, you can see that contrast is really bold. It doesn't necessarily look bad, but I thought it was a little bit too much. And so that's up to you. You can turn that on or leave that on, or you can turn it off. If you have a darker, I think really it's because it's on white. So if your background color here is darker, you may not want this curves adjustment turned on. But that's how you would turn on baseball or softball. We're almost done. Let's look at the lower tab layers, this very top folder. We'll open it up, excuse me. There's not a whole lot there. We've got our shape layer, which again can be changed, moved around. You can change the size, you can do anything you want there. But to change the color, again, you just double click on the color overlay here, click on this box, change your color, very simple. We have the year clip to this, and it's just a text layer. So if you wanted to, maybe you put the year somewhere else, you could put their logo on there. You've got some options. And then we got a paper texture. Pretty simple. That is all. All right, not too bad. Kind of breezed through all of that. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Like I said in the beginning, I did include a schedule option on this design. So I'm just going to touch on a few things there to explain how all of that works, and we'll wrap things up. I already have it pulled up here, so we'll just jump into it. Really, everything here is pretty much the same. We just want to look at this top folder. So if I open it up, we've got the word season schedule. You may end up wanting to change that. That's up to you. But then we have the shape behind where it says season schedule. So it has a color overlay. You can change the color that way. It is another shape layer, so it can be changed to fit whatever you need it to. Here we have our border frame. So if I turn that off, you can see maybe you don't want that border. You know, it kind of looks good without it. But if you do want the border, you can leave it turned on. And when you adjust the schedule, you know, it may be a different shape. So you might need it to be a little bit wider, a little bit narrower, maybe taller. So you can adjust it if you need to. The color of it is controlled with this stroke here. So double click that. You can change the color, you can change the size. You can do a few things with that there. Pretty simple stuff. I went ahead and split the schedule into left column and right column. Now you may have to completely reconstruct this. This is this team's particular schedule. And so I broke it down into subfolders, literally line 1, line 2, line 3. Now I have a color overlay on each one. So if you want to get fancy, you can turn that off, and you can actually go in and adjust colors of each layer independently if you want everything to not be the same. But for simplicity, you can just use this color overlay. So you can have a few colors. We'll just pick, well, let's go with green. That's something darker. You get the idea. So while we're in here in this line 1 subfolder, we'll take a look. We've got our date. Now we'll zoom in so we can see a little bit better. We've got our date. I've got it set up for the abbreviated month followed by the day. And so you can, I think I have it set up where it will, it's right orientated. Yes, it is. So let's say it was November 19th. It should stay all lined up for you. Here, I have a home plate option, and then I have a square option. So basically what I did was I used a home plate for home games, and then I used more of a base shape for away, if that makes sense. So you can decide which one you want to turn on or off. But they already have the away sign or the H for home. You can change the color with these color overlays if you're not keeping it all the same, but basically just turn on if it's away, turn this on. If it's home, turn this on. Pretty simple. And then the next one, we have our location and time, and it is set to left orientation. So, well, actually, no. Is it not? No, it is. It just didn't say stay lined up. Always something. So if it does that, even though I have left orientation, I don't know what happened there. You might have to just adjust it a little bit. But that's it. So we'll go back. There we go. Close this up. You basically just go through each line, set it to the color that you want, set it to home or away, and then change the details. Now you can, if this isn't enough, you can duplicate. So I'm on a Mac, I can hold down Option, click on a folder, drag it down to where you see that blue line, let go, you've duplicated it. Now you have another layer to work with. So you can duplicate these as much as you want or need to, or let's say maybe you have too much, you can start to turn some off and only use however many lines that you need. You can scale them. If you do scale them, I suggest you scale everything at the same time to keep things consistent. So I've selected the left column. I'll hold down Shift to select the right column with it. And if you scale them up, just do it all together. Same thing if you scale them down. Either way. That way it keeps everything exactly the same. I think that's it. I don't know. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. It wasn't too all over the place, but these things are always really long, so I'll try to get through it as quick as I can without leaving anything out. If you still have questions, if there's still anything that you need help with, feel free to reach out. Don@thirdcreative.com. That is all that I have for this one. I hope it serves you well. I hope it makes you some money. It's time for me to get busy on the next one. So until next time, we'll see you.